found through the pandemic really is that more and more people are becoming aware of hygiene. They understand that they need to wash their hands. They understand the need to decontaminate surfaces, and I think there's an expectation that other people are also going to be looking after them. So when they go into public spaces, there's an expectation that there should be hand sanitizer around. They should see that cleaning standards are good. And they should also not only appreciate that cleaning is good, but also that disinfection is taking place. So there is a raised awareness. But on the other hand, what we've also got is that I think there's also what's becoming we call hygiene fatigue. So I think we've got that coming in now. I think people have had enough. And so they're sort of starting to change perhaps their attitude to hygiene and thinking they sort of knew it was important during the pandemic. We're getting to a point where maybe, we need to keep up the good work. We need to keep encouraging people to be hygienic, because it's had such an amazing effect on not just COVID, but also on other infectious diseases. Well, what we're really passionate about is something called targeted hygiene. And what this means is that you're actually taking hygiene interventions at the places and times when they're most needed. So instead of saying to people, you've got to frequently wash your hands, we're actually telling them when is a good time to wash their hands. Because I think what can happen otherwise is that people get a bit overwhelmed and they think they have to do so much more hygiene, when in fact what they need to do is the interventions at the right time so that they can actually make sure that they're more effective. And actually this could also be more sustainable as well, because we're actually only using hygiene products when we really need to. So it's quite interesting how you said about how everyone needs to frequently wash their hands. And what we actually want to say to people is there are times when it's more important to wash your hands than at other times, and point people in the right direction and give them the tools to sort of understand almost like a risk assessment, but a personal risk assessment about when these interventions need to take place. Well, the idea with targeted hygiene is to think about the key moments when we need to take action to break the chain of infection. So what all this is about is how can we stop those nasty microbes, the ones that the germs, the pathogens, how can we stop them getting into our bodies? And it's understanding that route of infection or the journey of the germ and trying to break it to stop us getting ill. So we can't help the fact that there are microbes everywhere, and we can't help the fact that there are pathogens in many places. But what we can do is recognise when the high risk moments are and then take action. Hygiene is a really simple action that will help to break the chain of infection. So targeted hygiene is all about when do we take the action. So for example, if we arrive at a building, the time to take action in terms of hand hygiene is at that moment when we come out of public transport and we go into the building or we get home, we sanitize our hands or wash our hands at a wash basin. And what we've done then is we've taken an intervention that is going to stop those germs from the outside getting into the inside. And it means as well, if say, for example, we're just about to eat. Now, we all know from when we were kids that you don't eat with dirty hands, but of course people do. They rush off into a meeting or a conference, or, now we're starting to go out a bit more, and there's a pile of biscuits on the table or some fruit, and you see everyone, they've just come in from the outside, and then they go and dive into the biscuits and or the grapes or whatever. And of course, they're not thinking about what's on their hands. What have they picked up just now? So that's where I think targeted hygiene comes in. It's those moments where we need to think, are my hands clean enough to do what I'm just about to do? What we know as well is that people touch their faces around 23 times an hour. And that's quite a lot, really. And the route of transmission for viruses, respiratory viruses, is through the eyes, through the nose, and the mucous membranes of the mouth, in terms of it transferring from hands to the body. So obviously we've also got the coughs and sneezes and the aerosols and droplets to think about. But it's quite easy to actually infect yourself if you've got the virus on your hands and then you touch your eyes. So it's making sure that people understand that route of infection. So going back to that chain of infection or the journey of the germ, if you know that dirty hands stuck in your eyes could cause infection, then you can do two things to stop that. First of all, you can make sure that you have clean hands. And second, you can stop putting your hands in your eyes. So that's what targeted hygiene is all about. It's not saying we need to be sterile all the time. It's saying let's just focus on the real key moments when it will make a difference. I think there are two folds of thought here. The first one is let's make people safe. Let's make sure that people, for example, are now mingling more. There's less social distancing. They're not wearing their masks because they're not required to. That means there's a greater potential for respiratory viruses to be shed. And so businesses can take action. For example, like I just said, when you arrive at the business, you sanitize your hands. Let's make sure that those facilities are still there. And let's make sure that they are in the right place so that people going into the room, into the reception area, get the sanitizer so that they can't forget it. It's there in front of them. It's not on a wall miles away. They don't have to walk to a washroom on the other side of security. It's there so that they can use it. And let's put some nice messaging on, maybe a pot of flowers or something on top, or some balloons saying, clean hands from this point onwards, to encourage that uptake of hygienic behaviour. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is that people going back to work need to feel more confident. And I think, we've been away from the office for a long, long time, and we need to have our confidence restored that it's okay to go into the office, that someone's looking out for us. They are taking into account our safety and our health and putting interventions in that will make us feel safe and actually be safer. So we need to make sure that we communicate that to anyone entering the building. So whether it's a commercial operation, such as a hospitality business or an office, let's make sure that all the people coming in are aware of the safety precautions we're taking for them. And it's a great marketing point, actually, especially if you're using a well-known brand, because people will recognize that and feel comforted by the fact that they can see what the business is doing. So that's very important. And the other thing is that whilst we can't see these pathogens because they're invisible to the naked eye, if we see dirt around, we're not going to be very happy. We're not going to feel confident. So the standard of cleaning visual cleanliness needs to be good. And then I think the extra layer is the disinfection of frequently touched surfaces, and seeing people going around and using, again, a known brand to disinfect surfaces, frequently touched surfaces, is going to add another layer of security and confidence to people returning to work or into hospitality businesses. Potentially who are infectious with COVID, because remember that sometimes you don't get any symptoms. We're not perhaps testing as much. So people might be coming into the workplace who are infected, and that means that they could spread it to other people. We're also not having the face coverings on. So even if you are infected, there's no protection from aerosols and droplets going onto surfaces and directly onto other people. And of course, I'm finding more and more that people seem to be coughing and sneezing without protecting the other people from that cough and sneeze, which of course means that the droplets and aerosols are spraying out onto other people. And if you are infected, then that's potentially dangerous. So I think one of the things we probably need to do is a little bit of education and reminding people about the cough etiquette or the sneeze etiquette. And that's really just sneezing into the crook of your elbow, not your hands even, so that you don't spread the disease or particles to other people. And I think that's really important. So we do have a challenge because it's potentially more people are around, and certainly at the time we're talking, this pandemic has not gone away. And I think we have to be aware that a lot of people will be carrying this organism when they come into work, regardless of vaccination status and regardless of whether they've got any symptoms. I think the first thing is making sure that everyone knows that they're taking action. So as I said, looking at the website, saying we're doing these things, messaging when people arrive, having the right sanitizer at the right place for people to use. And I've noticed that bad practice is some businesses are actually taking it away. This is not the time to do that. This is the time to actually have more people sanitizing their hands, especially as we have more people walking around and coming into buildings who could be potentially infected. Getting the sanitizer, having a sanitizer that people like to use is really important. I know personally there's one shop and I hate their sanitizer. It smells horrible and I don't want to use it. So I actually get my own personal one out of my bag before going in. But, let's make it easy for people. Let's make it something that is pleasant to use and is available, because sometimes, you go to the sanitizing station and it's empty and you've touched it, and then you've got dirty hands because you've touched it and you haven't even got any sanitizer on your hands. So that's really important. In terms of the workplace, you can encourage healthy and hygienic behaviour by leaving wipes around. So having wipes at work, in workstations, in kitchens, in the office, and in the gym, for example. My gym, I've now ventured back in. They have hand sanitizer before you go in, and they have wipes so that you can wipe the equipment down before you use it, and also after you use it. Encouraging after a session, can everyone please just their equipment down, so that we're actually encouraged to look after others as well as just ourselves. And I think that's really important. And in hospitality, again, you have your hand sanitizer in the right place. You have a visibility that people are using a good sanitizing product that works against COVID and other infectious diseases on the tables. And you can see that there's visible cleanliness there, and in the bathrooms as well. Well, I think the most important thing is to actually clean at the right place in the right time. And indiscriminate spraying of chemicals all over the place is not necessarily going to get to the parts that actually really do need to be disinfected. So it's concentrating on those high touch points at key frequencies. So for example, when the building's very busy, that's very important, rather than just thinking, well, we'll do a deep clean once a day and have done with it. That's not going to work, because the load of viral contamination will continue to occur throughout the day. And the other thing that really annoys me actually is when you see people with gloves on, and they're not appreciating that the gloves themselves could be a vector for the disease to go from one place to another. So dirty gloves are just as bad as dirty hands. And I've actually seen people poking their eyes with the gloves on and thinking, oh my goodness, do you not realize that you actually could be putting the virus into your eyes? So I don't really like gloves, because I think it makes us forget the importance of hand hygiene. It's quite easy to think, well, the gloves are protecting me from getting infected, but they're not. They're just moving the virus around. And of course, if you scratch your face or touch your eyes, then you could just as easily get infected as if you've got dirty hands. So I'd like to see the end of gloves, to be honest, unless, of course, they have a purpose in terms of protecting the hands from a chemical, an application of a chemical.